Okay, you guys, so here we are. We are coming into the final stretch for this 2024 presidential election. So, as promised, what I'm going to do is a little bit of a dive into this from an astrological perspective, like how this could potentially unfold for us. I've already done a breakdown of Donald Trump's natal chart, of Kamala Harris's natal chart. I also did one on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s natal chart. And I'm glad I did that. I think you can still vote for him in certain states. I don't even know exactly what's going on with that, but I'm glad I did that because his transits are so strong for this year. I think a lot of people had never even heard of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. until this year. And then all of a sudden he's everywhere. And now he's endorsed Trump. I think that was probably the best move Trump could have made. And so I'm glad I did that. But what I'm going to do today, I will do kind of like a little overview of Kamala's chart and of Donald Trump's chart, but I'm mostly I'll just do an overview. So you just, if you didn't see that video, just so you kind of get an idea as to what their natal charts are all about. But then I'm going to mostly focus on their transits for November 5th. And then I'm also going to pull up something that's called Zodiacal releasing. I won't go, I'll go a little bit into depth on that, but as usual, I don't like to make, super long videos. I don't know about you guys, but for some reason, every time I see a video is like 3 hours long, I don't really want to watch it. So that's why I try to wrap these things up in about an hour. And also, I might pull up their progressions. I looked at their progressions. Actually, maybe I will. I'll just briefly pull up their secondary progressions. I'm not going to do their solar arc progressions, but regardless, when I looked at them, I didn't see anything that was like outstanding for either of them versus with Donald Trump's transits, it's like, holy smokes. I try and, imagine sometimes if I had no idea who he was, like how would I, envision this person and how his transits are unfolding. And the amount of chaos in that dude's life over the past year makes so much sense. It's very chaotic, but it's like overwhelmingly powerful for Donald Trump involving his transits. Okay. And Kamala's got some good stuff going on too. If you want to know who I think is going to win, then you might just have to hold off until the very end of this. If that's all you're here for, just fast forward to the last 10 minutes or so of this recording. And if you're curious about my opinion, who I want to win, really what it comes down to, of course, I kind of have somebody in mind that I would prefer, but in my opinion, it's like the whole thing is such an act to me. That's just my opinion. And I've actually really been ridiculed for that by family members for not wanting to participate in such a thing. But I've just read too many books about, to me, it's like for lack of a better term, there's like a machine that's running the whole show from behind the scenes that us as the general public don't have access to. We don't get to see that stuff unless you really dive deep into things like occult studies. Okay. And not only that, but I think whoever wins, truthfully, I think whoever wins this election, I think we are headed into some chaotic times. And I don't want that to sound scary. I don't want anybody to freak out, but the fact that we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all changing zodiac signs within a few months of each other, that is a very big deal. That is something that just doesn't happen very often. In fact, the last time it happened, it was something like 1739 to 1741, but it was a total different lineup. These guys, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the power players, the generational influencers, all changing signs at the same time, while having these very strong aspects with each other. And not only that, but Uranus moving into Gemini, the United States has a history of going into war when Uranus moves into Gemini. And that's what Uranus is doing. Okay. And not only that, but we're also getting fairly close I think it's like 3 years from now, the United States will be having a Uranus return. So I really do think that no matter who wins, we're headed into some chaos. But it's like the ultimate goal here is we flow through it. I don't predict any kind of total apocalypse, end of humanity. I certainly don't see that at all. I think humanity has made it through way too much and proven itself to be too um too too promising for there to be a total apocalypse. But I do think we're in for some massive changes, massive changes. And my hope is, and I promise I'm going to get a call his chart in just a minute here, but my hope is that more things come to light. You know, we are going into this age of Aquarius. The motto for Aquarius is I know. It's very much involved with things that are revolutionary and technological and that sort of thing. I think that more and more people are starting to realize how deep the lies are that, you know, we've been told as the general public. I think a lot of people, you know, big name people are going to start. We already are seeing it. We're already seeing it. You know, it was like Jeffrey Epstein was probably one of the first. And then, oh boy, what was that other guy's name? Some Hollywood producer guy. I don't remember his name, but he got busted. You know, Bill Cosby, then now the P. Diddy. I think more and more stuff of that nature is going to come to light. And there's probably some very big, people in politics that are, for a reason, keeping this stuff hidden. So yeah, I think things are going to be crazy no matter who wins. I'll just leave that there. Let's pull up Kamala's chart here. Okay, so if you're new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. With that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of Kamala Harris's natal chart. And basically what that is with geocentric, that means we put Kamala right here in the middle of this thing. These things right here are the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like here's the moon, here's Jupiter, here's Mars, here's Uranus, here's Pluto, here's Venus. We go in the wheel just a little ways. These things are the symbols, the glyphs for the zodiac signs that all those planets and celestial bodies were beaming through onto Kamala when she took her first breath of air. Now, of course, I have absolutely no way of proving or saying even with 100% certainty that Kamala Harris was born on October 20th, 1964 at 9:28 p.m. in Oakland, California. But she does. This chart definitely seems like it's a very Kamala Harris chart, knowing what, you know, we see from her. I do think that all these guys are puppets and actors, but they're still, it's like it would, from an astrological perspective, you would still see their permanent planetary resonance imprint shine through. So briefly here, let's just kind of, again, touch on the most important parts of her chart, what we all see, okay? So here's her sun right here at 27 degrees Libra and 48 minutes. Here's her moon at 27 degrees and 39 minutes Aries. What we see here right away is that the sun and the moon are exactly opposite each other, meaning she was born on a full moon. She was actually just born just minutes before it was the peak of a full moon. Most people who were born, especially if it's just before the full moon peaks, tend to have an ability or a tendency to have some more like authority or power in the world, that sort of thing. But especially because these are coming through cardinal signs. Libra's cardinal, Aries is cardinal. Aries is like the warrior of the zodiac. So yeah, she was born with a full moon in the sign of the warrior, okay? And not only that, but when we come back over here to her sun in Libra. So the sun is our inner being. It's our sense of identity. And you'll notice a lot of Libras, certainly not all of them, but a lot of people who have a strong Libra energy in their natal chart, they'll go into something along the lines of politics or justice or something along those lines. But Libra it's the scales. You know, the motto is I balance. It's very much the sign of a lot of people who they don't necessarily just have their sun in Libra, but if they've got strong Libra energy, they're drawn to things like, you know, legal matters, that sort of thing. Now, but Libra is not like an aggressive sign. It's cardinal, so it's got some force, but it's not an aggressive energy. But she's much more like fierce than the average Libra. And part of that is because A, she was born on a full moon in Aries, but B, this right here is Mercury, which was very, very close to the sun. Different zodiac sign. Mercury's at 1 degree Scorpio, but they're still conjunct. They're just a few degrees away from each other. So Mercury is what really rules over our mental function, how we receive information. That information is processed in our consciousness and we can bring it back out to communicate it. Mercury is basically the ruler of that. The sign of Scorpio is the most intense and fierce and magnetic sign of the zodiac. A lot of people who have their Mercury in Scorpio will process information very, very intensely. They like to do research and that sort of thing. And so with her sun so close to Mercury, they are blending together, making her much more of a fierce kind of energy than the average Libra. Now, trying to decide where I should go next. Let's go here next, even though I want to talk about her rising sign, but let's focus here because mostly what we're talking about today is her career. Okay, up here, the top of the chart basically is very strongly associated with the area of the life that rules over career and status in the world and recognition. And what we see coming through here, this right here is Saturn. She's got a great Saturn. My goodness. She's got Saturn in Aquarius, which is one of Saturn's own home, Saturn's own home. So he works very comfortably there. Okay. And Saturn loves to be at the top of the chart here because Saturn loves authority. Okay. Saturn loves responsibilities and discipline and that sort of thing. And this right here, this thing, which is called the midheaven, that is really, it's like this actual 10th house, this little slice of pie you're seeing here, that's actually like the house of career. But this thing right here, the midheaven, is more direct. It's like the point of career. Okay. And that comes through 2 degrees Pisces, which that's generally speaking, Pisces is not really a sign that's strongly associated with career. But what Pisces is like this flowy kind of go with everything, the kind of sign of oneness sort of energy. And we do see her project some of that out, but it's a lot more authoritative because this right here is Saturn very close to her midheaven. Again, different zodiac signs, but they're still close enough to where they're blending together. So this is a strong chart for career, just having Saturn in Aquarius right there, so close to her midheaven. Moreover, going back to her inner being, here and her sun and her Mercury blending together, that kind of more fear, like, Libra, like, like she can balance things out. But then there's this more kind of fierce energy coming through because of the conjunction with Mercury and Scorpio. They are trining each other, these blue lines. Okay. What that means is basically these guys are getting along with these guys. Her inner being really can in essence, like harmonize with her career. Okay, now back down here, this right here is her ascendant. By the way, I'm using something called the whole sign house system. Nothing against the other house systems, but this is what we're working with today. So this is the ascendant, which is basically the horizon. Okay, and what this rules over is our persona, our outward expression, our lens, the way that other people see us and the way that we see the world. And that's coming through 24 degrees Gemini. So Gemini is really like the sign of communication. You'll notice a lot of Gemini risings will be the chatty ones. They're very sociable, okay? I do think that part of how Kamala got to the position that she's at today is through her kind of social, what's the word I'm looking for here? She just kind of climbed the ladder through social gatherings and that sort of thing. But she's way more powerful than the average Gemini rising. Okay. When we think about the sign of Gemini, we wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't look up keywords to the sign of Gemini and find the word powerful with it. That certainly doesn't mean that people who have Gemini in their chart can't be powerful, clearly. But it's just not, again, Gemini is like the social butterfly. Okay. This right here is the North Node, which is basically like the direction we're going in life. Okay. It's often referred to or associated with our destiny, but not necessarily the only reason I don't like that is because it sounds like my destiny. It just sounds like rainbows and butterflies, but really that North Node, it's the dragon's head. Okay. It's Rahu. It's a lot more aggressive. It's a very, in traditional ancient astrology, the nodes are said to be more powerful than the sun and the moon. Okay. So when she was born, that North Node was literally right on the horizon. Okay, so that's a very heavy dose of Gemini energy coming in, that the social butterfly, but it's like in a very strong way. Not only that, but this comes through the first house, which is the house of self. A lot of people, and this is actually something that was going to come up with Donald Trump's chart as well. A lot of people who are born with the North Node very strongly conjunct their ascendant or their sun will, or even their midheaven will kind of, there's this pull for them in life. It's almost like they kind of, in a weird way, know which direction to go in life. They're driven people. Okay. So she's just very driven. And there we have that career part that also harmonizes down here with her ascendant, and then boom, more trines over to here to her sun and her Mercury. She's kind of got a couple of grand trines going on here. I'm talking about this triangle going through the middle of the chart. Most people who are born with some sort of a grand trine in their chart, especially if it's involving their sun and their rising sign, then it's almost like they have some sort of a talent or something like of a gift, something that they can be good at doing things. Sometimes a lot of times when people have grand trines in their chart, other people can almost be like envious of the people with the grand trine, not realizing like, oh, I'm so jealous you have a grand trine, but rather that person is just drawn to, they just have a gift, I guess. And so other people are like, well, how come that person got that sort of thing. Okay. Now, let's see here. I should probably cover her Jupiter. Okay. So going back up to her midheaven and her 10th house being ruled by Pisces. Pisces' traditional ruler is Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to be a pretty strong key player for her career. Okay. Jupiter in her natal chart is down here in the sign of Taurus. I can say some things. I don't think I should, though. They're coming through her house of karma. And basically what I was going to say is a lot of people in Jupiter in Taurus can end up having like a sluggish liver. Okay. And that manifests in the outer world as well. That's more medical astrology, but it's coming through her 12th house, her house of karma. I mean, she looks like she takes pretty good care of herself, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was something going on with the liver. But especially in this 12th house. Okay. So house of karma, the ruler of her career is in her house of karma in the sign of Taurus, which Taurus is very much the sign of money and finances and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's going to be more important when I pull up transits. But also one thing I want to point out is her Mars and Leo. Both Kamala and Donald Trump both have Mars in Leo. And Mars transiting Mars just enters Leo like the day before the election, which is wow. Okay. Mars is our physical drive. Mars is in the body, what rules the muscles and all the adrenals, things that make you go, boom, I got to go do that. Okay. And Leo, the motto for Leo is I will. Okay. This is very strong willpower coming through here. Not only that, but that's in her 3rd house, her house of communication. So, the whole word salad thing, I can definitely understand with Miss Kamala Harris here. Now, something else I'm going to point out here is here's her lot of fortune in the sign of Sagittarius. That doesn't matter so much right now, but when I pull up the Zodiacal releasing, that'll matter. And also her lot of fortune is to the degree conjunct her south node. So that's interesting as well. That south node is a little bit of a drain point. Okay. So when we pull up the Zodiacal releasing, keep that in mind. Her lot of fortune is very close to that south node. That may or may not mean something. Okay. As far as these elections go. Now I'm going to pull up her transits. Okay. It should be saved in here as the previous transit. No, I'm going to have to plug this in again. Bear with me. New transit date, we're going with November 5th, 2024. And let's go, it was 7 a.m. Perfect. Okay, so the inner wheel is her natal chart. The outer wheel is where all the planets and celestial bodies will be on November 5th. I put in 7 a.m. and I kind of put that number in for a reason. But all right, now the thing that stands out most is that so here's that 10th house, that house of career and status and recognition. Well, just recently, basically like kind of started 2023. She had a Saturn return, her second Saturn return. Here's Saturn in her natal chart. Here's transiting Saturn. Saturn takes about 28 to 30 years to go around this entire zodiac. And when we have a Saturn return, a lot of times it'll be about restructuring her life. But for her, she's got such a good, strong Saturn in her natal chart. I feel like the restructuring of her life was again, this part is recognition and career that involved her like being bumped into something where she gets way more recognition. Okay. And currently, Saturn is scooting along in her house of career. Now, a lot of people, especially if they have a good Saturn in their natal chart, will have some kind of a career peak when Saturn enters into their 10th house. But on the flip side of that, also, a lot of people, Saturn is the bringer of death. A lot of times people will experience the death of their career. Okay, so to me, with her Saturn right where it is in her natal chart, and just having her Saturn return, I'm not surprised at all that all of a sudden she's like, running for president. Okay, but as Saturn moves along here, it would make sense to me if she didn't win, and that's like the end of her career. She just retires after that. Okay. She'll probably still put her face all over the place as best as she can, but for the most part, the career could end. That is something that I could potentially foresee, especially because, okay, down here in her natal chart, she's got Uranus, Pluto, Venus, all in the sign of Virgo, which, by the way, I think that probably could easily manifest as somebody who can go through like documents and pay attention to the details of documents. I think she was a prosecutor or something like that. I could definitely see that, especially Pluto involved there. Okay. Now, this Saturn up in the sky is sending some very strong oppositions towards mostly her natal Uranus, but also Pluto. Now, this is a total family disaster. Okay. And the reason I say that, not necessarily her family, but just Saturn here in Greek mythology is basically, I'm going to give you the gist of the story. Uranus is son. Okay. Here's Uranus. He's Saturn's father. Saturn is Uranus's son. Well, they battled hardcore. Okay. To the point where Saturn actually cut off his father's, Uranus's, testicles. Okay. And so when Saturn and Uranus are having a conversation up in the sky, these aspects, these lines, when one's beaming rays towards the other, it generally can be a very stressful transit. Okay. And not only that, but it's also Pluto involved here, which Pluto would be Saturn's son. And they also battled hardcore. Okay. So we see a battle going on with Saturn as he's transiting through her house of career with these guys. Okay. Now, again, that's a stressful transit. Not only that, but she's also got, okay, we talked about how earlier her sun and her moon are exactly opposite each other. Well, what's going on November 5th? Here's Pluto, transiting Pluto up in the sky, squaring her sun and squaring her moon. Pluto is brutal. Pluto, I mean, I love Pluto. We all love Pluto, but Pluto can be brutal, man. He really can. Pluto is the ruler of the underworld, rules our psyche. Okay, Pluto can be great for certain things. Pluto rules our spiritual willpower, but he's pretty gnarly. Okay, it's like when somebody's having a heavy Pluto transit, sometimes it could just feel like the rock bottom of an experience. Okay. And so there's Pluto at the 29th degree of Capricorn, the anaretic degree of Capricorn. Capricorn is very strongly associated with things like authoritarian establishments, government, that sort of thing. And squaring, those squares create a force, an internal tension kind of force with her inner being, her sun, and her emotional energy, and not only that, but she's got like a fiery way of emotions with her moon in the sign of Aries. So that's kind of gnarly too. And we will also have Mars here. Mars is our physical willpower. Pluto is our spiritual willpower. Both of them. Mars is the planet of war. Okay. And again, at 0 degrees Leo. So he is working so forcefully and beaming these rays at her sun and her moon. So that is really a lot of internal tension going on within her. I don't care who she is. I mean, she could just be, some stranger off the street and seeing this. I would honestly, I can't help but have a little compassion when I see somebody who's going through a stressful transit, no matter who they are. Okay, now also we talked about how Jupiter is like the lord of her, the area of her life that rules over career. Well, her Jupiter is kind of under attack, okay? Because, and again, remember this 12th house, it has a lot to do with secret enemies, has a lot to do with, well, secrets in general, things that are hidden. The 12th house can be good. Everything in astrology, every little thing in astrology is going to have some good things about it and then some not so good things about it. Okay. But her Jupiter is kind of under attack here with Uranus. Again, that Uranus is what Uranus influences is unpredictable. Uranus can be great for certain things. Uranus can actually, strangely, sometimes bring like miraculous healing to people. Certainly not always, but Uranus is so unpredictable. If we think about feeling Uranus, it's almost like electrical energy, like a surge of energy. Uranus throws surprises at us, okay? And generally speaking, those surprises are not fun. They can just be very spasmodic. And what Uranus has done here is gone over the Lord of her midheaven and her 10th house, and now is retrograding back over it. Okay, that's restlessness, a lot of restlessness. And she's probably feeling like nervous. I wish I could think of a better word than nervous, but overall just nervous about what is being said behind her back. Okay, so that's something else that stands out to me. Okay, now on a lighter note for Miss Kamala here, she does have Jupiter. Again, Jupiter is the ruler of her 10th, transiting through her house himself, transiting through the sign of Gemini. But what Jupiter's done here is he came up, he got really, really close to her ascendant and her north node, got really close, but now is retrograding away from them. So Jupiter pretty much, it's like, of course, there's things that can come in and modify this or counteract the energy. But for the most part, when Jupiter's transiting through somebody's first house, that can be luck. It can be abundance. It can be a really good transit. But I'm not exactly convinced that Jupiter is going to necessarily have her win this race based on the transits that we're looking at here. Okay, now, another thing I want to point out is on November 5th, what happens here is the moon up in the sky early that morning, like suppose it kind of depends on what time zone you're in, but I'm in Pacific time zone. Early that morning, the moon is finishing up through the sign of Sagittarius, which I thought was interesting. A lot of fortune is in the sign of Sagittarius, 7th house. 7th house is the house of contracts, relationships, partnerships. But what's going on here is then I think it's around 7:12 a.m. Pacific time. The moon moves into the sign of Capricorn. Now, again, the sign of Capricorn, and not only that, but the moon is waxing. The moon is getting bigger. We will have just had a new moon. But the moon, so as the moon is growing, she distributes light as she is going around the entire zodiac, whether she's waxing or waning. But it tends to be a little more powerful about growth as the moon is waxing, getting bigger. So the moon will move into the sign of Capricorn on the 5th, which again, Capricorn, it's that sign of authority. And then just about 2.5 days later, the moon is going to transit over Pluto as Pluto's at the 29th degree and the moon is waxing. So I think this is going to be, not only that, but here's Pluto up in the sky. Here's Mars up in the sky. Look at this. They are almost exactly opposing each other on November 5th. So we're talking about the ruler of the underworld, Pluto, and the god of war opposing each other, having that very intense conversation. So no matter who wins, there's probably, I mean, even not even talk about what I was talking about earlier. I think, which is kind of the case every election, but whoever wins, I think that there's going to be people freaking out on either side. And in fact, let's pull up Donald Trump's chart now. But what I was going to say is that even I think if Donald Trump wins, I think people are, half the population is going to have a complete and utter meltdown. And what I mean by meltdown is that I could we saw what happened last time. What was it, 2016 when Donald Trump won? Just people literally screaming in the streets. And it's actually kind of silly. But, and then I think if Kamala wins, I think that other half of the population is just going to throw their hands in the air and be like, I ain't listening to government. I'm out of here, which potentially, in my opinion, might be a beautiful thing. But I do think that either way it goes, things are going to get really interesting. Okay, now, Donald Trump's natal chart. Okay, again, I can't say with 100% certainty that Donald Trump was born on June 14th, 1946 at 10:54 a.m. Pacific time in Eastern time in Queens, New York. But again, this chart totally seems like Donald Trump in a hilarious way. Okay, so here we have the sun and the moon opposing each other again. We've got another full moon, except this one is a lunar eclipse. I swear, so many presidential candidates were either born on an eclipse or born on a full moon. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was, if I remember correctly, was born on a solar eclipse. Donald Trump here was born on a lunar eclipse. And the way we can see that, so here's the sun, here's the moon. They're opposing each other. It's mutable signs, so it's not quite as the cardinal. But here's his sun. Here's that north node. Remember we talked about with Kamala's chart, that north node is right next to her ascendant. It's like pushing forward. But this is his sun. This is his inner being. Okay. And not only that, right next to the north node here is Uranus, which we talked about this. Uranus is totally sporadic. You'll notice a lot of people who are born with Uranus near their sun or their ascendant. They're the kind of people that will just like bust into a room. Let's say you're having like quiet time with the family, and all of a sudden somebody born with Uranus conjunct their sun, boom, opens the door. They don't even realize they're doing it. It's like completely unintentional, inconsiderate kind of thing can happen when somebody's born with Uranus right next to their sun. And in that sign of Gemini, here we go, that sign that's Donald Trump can talk. Okay, I forced myself to listen to about an hour of the podcast with Joe Rogan brought Donald Trump on, because I don't like to follow this stuff, but I like to understand what's going on and apply it to astrology, especially like watching people. I do this with everybody. I'll psychoanalyze people and I'm like, okay, what's your birthday time and location? And then I like to just, see how this is manifesting. But that dude can actually, it's when we see Kamala, it does seem like Kamala is reading something the whole time. And she does have this like kind of way of swerving her way around questions versus Donald Trump. He actually, it almost seems like he's just having a conversation. But I will say this, in that podcast, I'm cracking up because I know Donald Trump's natal chart. I know he's a Leo rising, and Joe Rogan, I believe he's a Leo. I think I looked into that years ago, but they both kept interrupting each other. It was like this unintentional power trip between the two of them. Because if you think about it, like Donald Trump's used to being in a position where it doesn't matter who the heck he cuts off. It doesn't matter who he interrupts. He gets to do that. And then the same thing for Joe Rogan. And they were trying to be considerate to each other at the same time. So it was just interesting to watch that. But he was answering questions, that sort of thing. That's a very strong sun conjunct north node in Gemini. Okay, now this all comes through his 11th house, which is the house of friends and associates and networking with people and hopes and wishes. Okay. It's a strong house, especially if your sun is conjunct your north node in there. It's a strong house for having like the right group of friends to make things happen, make things come together. Not only that, but those things have been lit up by transiting Jupiter. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. And then I want to point out this rising energy over here. So here's his ascendant at 29 degrees Leo, 29 degrees Leo, the energetic degree of Leo. Leo's such a fun energy. It's the leader of the zodiac. It's ruled by the sun. Again, the motto is I will. It's a very, all this energy. So here's his ascendant, his persona, his outward expression. Right next, Mars had just come over the horizon. Okay, right before he took his first breath of air. So Mars was beaming right onto him, coming through the sign of Leo. That is extreme willpower. And, you see Donald Trump looks very stubborn in his ways. That's a very Leo rising, Mars conjunct the horizon, but also it does seem that he is able to adjust into new things, hang out with all different types of people. It's the blend of the Gemini, all this Gemini energy and this Leo energy. Okay, now this right here is Pluto. So he's got Mars, and Mars is our physical drive, our physical willpower. Pluto is our spiritual willpower, okay, coming through the sign of Leo. And some even suggest that Pluto exalts in the sign of Leo. Also seen Pluto exalted in other signs, but I feel it's like Leo being the leader of the zodiac and Pluto being kind of like the planet of power. Okay. So all this coming through his first house, his house of self. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Like I said, I see this chart and I immediately know this is going to be somebody who's powerful in the world. Okay. Now I will. Okay, let's quickly talk about his Saturn. He does not have the greatest Saturn. He really doesn't. His Saturn it's debilitated in the sign of Cancer, because Cancer's sensitive and Saturn's not sensitive. It's also debilitated for other reasons, but we'll just stick with that for now. But Saturn he's in his joy in the 12th house. Saturn could be, good for karma here, but it's like when Saturn is kind of like the builder, the planner and the builder. And from my understanding, Donald Trump had a lot to do. It's like what he was talking about last night on that podcast with Joe Rogan. He said something along the lines of like, I built all those buildings in New York. I built all that. And clearly he wasn't out there with a hammer and nails building things. But I think it's more like he had the right connections, the right network of people, the right associates circling this 11th house where his sun and North Node and Uranus are, to actually make that happen, to make the building happen. Okay, so that, I don't think he's got the strongest Saturn. However, it's fairly close to Venus, which there's definitely pros and cons to that. I think that's also a big reason why I think Donald Trump, along with a lot of other celebrities, has had kind of like associates or affiliates with people who are doing secret things. Okay, and not only that, but his Mercury's in here as well, that 12th house. But his Saturn, these green lines going up to his midheaven, this is the point that rules his career. That's what we're going to talk about next. His Saturn, very, very strong sextile aspect, which creates opportunities with that point of career. So that can be beneficial to his career period and his status in the world. Okay, so his midheaven, this is an important part to understand when we talk about transits. So his midheaven is at 24 degrees Taurus. First of all, he doesn't have any planets up here, but if we flip into a different house system, you see a lot of planets in the 10th house. But regardless, Taurus is such a strong, stable, it's the fixed earth sign. Taurus is the bull. It doesn't want to budge. And a lot of people, even with having no planets in the sign of Taurus, if the sign of Taurus is ruling their 10th house, they can have this like strong, stable career that they hold on to. And it probably hurts like hell when they have to let go of that career. But that's very strong Taurus energy coming through the area of his life that rules over career. Okay, now, gosh, there's so much I could say. You can always go back and review the recording that I did about Donald Trump's chart earlier. Okay, so let's pull up his transits. Oh, one more thing. Also, this again will matter when we pull up the Zodiacal releasing. His lot of fortune comes through the sign of Aquarius, which is a fixed sign. Okay, now let's go to, hopefully I've got it in here. Yay, November 5th, 7 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, so again, inner wheel is Donald Trump's natal chart. The outer wheel is where all the planets will be on November 5th. Okay, and let's start here. So let's start with that career energy. So again, we kind of pointed this out with Kamala's chart. So here's the sign of Taurus right here. Remember, Kamala's Jupiter was in Taurus. And here's Uranus up in the sky in the sign of Taurus. Well, what Uranus has been doing for Donald Trump is went over the point that rules over his career and then it is now retrograding back. Okay, Uranus is so strong when in retrograde. Okay, Uranus is even more unpredictable when in retrograde. Okay, so this is just looking at that in of itself. I'm like, wow, okay. I do think he's got great potential to win this election, but I think something very weird is going to happen. I think something that I won't be able to predict. I think something very strange is going to happen, especially if Donald Trump wins. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Uranus is going to retrograde backwards over his midheaven and then have to move forward again. Okay, this could unfold over the next months, okay, all the way going really even into December, January. There could be some really weird stuff that goes on involving Donald Trump and his career. But that also could be like success. Uranus is like lighting it up. Okay. Now, here we have all of his Gemini energy, his sun, his North Node, and Uranus. Well, here's Jupiter. Jupiter is the great benefic. Okay. Jupiter is the one that brings luck and abundance, wisdom, and philosophy. Now, Jupiter has transited over all of these things, went over his natal Uranus, went over his North Node, went over his sun, and is now, oh, actually, I think it got like right up on his sun, and then is now retrograding back over those things. Okay, so this is very different than what Kamala is experiencing with Jupiter going through her first house. This is very different because this is Donald Trump relies on this 11th house. Donald Trump relies on his friends and his networks and his associates. And Jupiter could do quite well in this 11th. Jupiter can bring even more abundance to those things. So I'm thinking about, I mean, honestly, I think him bringing Bobby Kennedy onto his team got him millions of votes. That's my own personal opinion. But I think and not only that, but he's now connected with like Tulsi Gabbard, just all the right network of people for people who are really trying to, make America healthier again. People, trying to get the pesticides out and the processed foods and the seed oils and all that crap out of our food. That was because a lot of people are starting to realize, like, wait a minute here. Yeah, everybody's getting fat in America and everybody's, dying of cancer. Everybody's got some sort of an autoimmune disease, especially in the United States. And a lot of that is because of our food supply. Okay. And so more and more, it's the time, even just astrologically speaking here, it's the time where more people are starting to realize that the Aquarius, I know. Okay. And so Jupiter bringing more, into his life, more people, more affiliates, more associates, people endorsing him, that sort of thing. That's great for Jupiter there. Of course, anytime anything up here transits through his 11th, of course, it's going to oppose his moon and his south node. But I really do feel like this is especially, sorry, his south node, his moon and his south node. It's going to oppose his moon and south node. But it's that north node, the dragon's head, is so powerful. It's like taking in that Jupiter energy for Mr. Trump here. Okay, now he's also got Mars transiting through his first house, his house of self. This happens, I think, the date Mars goes into Leo. I think it's the day before, like November 4th. Mars enters Leo. So for him, let's say he does win this thing. Mars in the first, it's like, I'm ready to go. I got things to do. I got all kinds of, things I got to set up, meetings to arrange. I got people to hire. Blah, 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 blah. That's Mars can be good for that going through the first house for sure. Okay, now one more thing I wanted to point out. Oh, the ruler of his 10th house and his midheaven, his career would be Venus. And what I did notice is that on the day before the election, Venus will go over his south node, which may not be the greatest, but will go over his moon. That can be a little more like soothing. Okay. It's like basically what I'm looking at here is Kamala's chart looks like restlessness, unsettled things, kind of just nervousness, internal tensions. And I'm sure that they're both experiencing those things. Who wouldn't be if you're all over, everybody's screens? But I feel like Trump's is a little more like, okay, this is just what's happening now. And I based on the transits here, it's looking pretty freaking strong for Mr. T. Okay, now what I'm going to do is pull up her, start with Kamala, Zodiacal releasing. I should have this all set to go here. Okay, so yes, we've got Kamala's release from the Lot of Fortune. Okay, so what we're looking at here is something called Zodiacal releasing, and it's fascinating and extremely complicated. It's an ancient astrological technique that has only recently, like over the last 20 years, been able to be interpreted and brought back into astrology. But unless somebody is having like a total peak period, like level 1 peak period, in my opinion, transits really sort of dominate over the zodiacal releasing. Okay, kind of same thing for progressions. But if you remember, I pointed out that Kamala Harris's Lot of Fortune is in the sign of Sagittarius. That's what's important to know, is that the sign of Sagittarius is a mutable sign. So anytime the Lot of Fortune is releasing through another mutable sign, that means she's having a peak period. Well, so what we do, this lovely website here, astroseek.com, we can just scroll down through the years here. We're going to go all the way down here to, we can see 2024. Okay, now this L1, that means level 1. Level 1, she's releasing through this Aquarius energy, which Aquarius is a fixed sign. Okay, that's definitely not a peak period for her. So I can scroll down here and go all the way to June 7th, which is a L2, level 2 period, where it's just going through the sign of Scorpio, which Scorpio is also a fixed sign. And so far, this is not looking spectacular for Miss Kamala Harris. Then I looked at level 3 and I scroll down here. Let's see, where was it? Goes down to October 20th of 2024. It starts releasing through the sign of Aquarius. This Lot of Fortune for her is just not, Aquarius again is a fixed sign. There's not a lot to really back her up or look promising for her to win this election. Now, what we're looking at currently is the Lot of Fortune. I hope so. Yeah, Lot of Fortune. That's her. The Lot of Fortune is her constitution, her her body, herself, okay? But the next one we're going to look at is her lot of spirit. See if I got this one right. Yep. Okay. So her lot of spirit. Her lot of spirit is also in the sign of Sagittarius. But when your lot of spirit and lot of fortune are both in the same zodiac sign, you move the lot of spirit ahead one zodiac sign. So they're starting it from the sign of Capricorn, but still we're basing this on the sign of Sagittarius, where her lot of fortune is. Even though we're releasing from the lot of spirit, it has to be a mutable sign that it would would show she's having a peak period. So once again, I'm going to scroll down here and level 1, lot of spirit is career. Lot of fortune is herself, her body. A lot of spirit is career and authority. So right now we're releasing from her lot of spirit, her career. Well, here we have a level 1. She's releasing through the sign of Pisces. Pisces is a mutable sign. Not only that, but it is her 10th house. Okay, that's where her midheaven is, her career. So that does look like a pretty strong, but if you look at it also, that started in 2020. That's when, Biden won and she, was the vice president. That's a peak period. If anybody's interested in this, I love doing this stuff for clients. I love looking at, especially when I see somebody's having a level 1 peak period, it's like, holy smokes, because we don't have them very often at all. Okay. But then we scroll down to level 2 here. She started a level 2 peak period in November of 2023. So she's having a level 1 because it's in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is mutable. Not only that, but it's her first house. Okay, those are angular houses. So that's really, really good for her. And that started November of 2023. And then so I clicked down here and I looked to see what's going on in level 3. I think this is where it ended here. Let's see. Okay. So she had another peak period. Oh, it'd be interesting to look at when I don't remember when it was, when all of a sudden Biden wasn't going to run anymore and Kamala was. I'd be curious to see when that was and apply it to this. But she was having another peak period, a level 3. So she's already having level 1 and level 2, but then she was also having a level 3 peak period, Sagittarius, which is mutable, which would be her 7th house. That started August 4th of 2024, and that went on till September 3rd of 2024. And she's now on the level 3 of releasing through the sign of Capricorn, which is cardinal. It's not mutable, so that's not a peak period for her. And that goes on until November 9th. She doesn't have a level 3 peak period again until January 23rd of 2025. So regardless, though, her lot of spirit zodiacal releasing is very strong. Okay, very, very strong. It's like Donald Trump's transits look stronger, but her zodiacal releasing, a lot of spirit looks much stronger. Okay, so now let's look at Mr. Trump's chart here. Where did I put his? This is it. Lot of fortune. No, that's Kamala. We want Trump. Okay, a lot of fortune. Here we go. All right, so if you remember, Donald Trump's lot of fortune was in the sign of Aquarius, which is a fixed sign, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way down here, and we will look to see that he's not having a level 1 peak period. Now, again, we're looking at a lot of fortune, so it's just Donald Trump. It's his constitution. He is not having a peak period. It's at least level 1. It's in the sign of Gemini. And then I scroll down to here, level 2, he did start a level 2 peak period. And when I say peak period, I'm talking, it's like where your life becomes like, oh my God, this is happening, sort of thing. And he's having a level 2 peak period that started in July of 2022, July 5th. Okay. And then, because it's Aquarius is fixed, not only that, but his lot of fortune is in the sign of Aquarius. So then we scroll down here to, where's the next one up here? Oh, that's right. I remember now. Okay. So level three, he started a peak period on August 23rd of this year, and that goes on all the way till November 6th. So he's not having a level one, but he is having a level two and a level three. And I think he was having a level four for his lot of fortune as well. Let me just look at this real quick. Okay. So level four was okay. No, he's not having a level four peak. I mean, he is from October 27th until November 2nd, but the elections are on November 5th. But still, okay, so a lot of fortune releasing peak period level two and level three. That's pretty good. Not as good as the lot of spirit for Kamala, but it's still pretty good. Okay, now where did I put his bear with me. I just got too much stuff up on my screen here. This is Kamala. This is, what does this say? Bear with me, guys. I apologize. Okay, June 14th, Love of Fortune. And this is June 14th, Lot of Spirit. Here it is. Okay, so now we're looking at Donald Trump's releasing from the lot of spirit, which that is career. And I totally get it. Some people are probably like, what is this lady talking about? Just follow along as best as you can. Okay, so lot of spirit is career. We're going to scroll down here. All right, so level one. This started in the year 2020, or sorry, 2000. Level one, releasing through the sign of Cancer. His lot of fortune. Again, we're releasing from the lot of spirit, but we still have to base this on the lot of fortune, which is in a sign of Aquarius, which is a fixed sign. So we're looking at level one here, which is in the sign of Cancer, which is cardinal. So that is not a peak period for him, level one. Then we scroll down here, 2023, August 29th of 2023 is level two starts releasing through the sign of Aries, which that's cardinal as well. So that there's still no peak period for him on level two. And then I'm looking at level three here, and I'm scrolling down to October 24th. October 24th, he started a level three peak period for his career. Now, that's not really like that big of a deal, but it can be good. It can be good. Okay, and then level four, see here. Oh, yeah. Okay. On November 5th, but this is not until the evening of November 5th, he will also have a level four peak period. It'll be going to the sign of Taurus. Taurus is his house of career. Wow. Yeah. I so apologize for people who don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But for those of you who do have an idea as to what I'm talking about, you can see it. It's really powerful stuff. Okay. Let's quickly go through. Let's start with, what is this? This is Kamala's progressions. Okay, so again, I don't want to spend too much time on the progressions because they're just, I didn't see anything that was that outrageous. But Kamala does have something, the strongest aspect I see. And when we talk about these secondary progressions, that has nothing to do with what's going on up in the sky. It's like her own internal biological clock. The inner wheel is her natal chart. The outer wheel is like how she's progressing or evolving through this life. And she's got a bunch of stuff progressing through that seventh house, which seventh house can have a lot to do with contracts. It's usually referred to as the house of relationships, but it's certainly not just romantic relationships. It's very much like partnerships of any kind, business partner, an attorney, that sort of thing. Anything that has a contract, even if it's not a written contract, it could be a verbal contract. Okay, so she does have a very busy seventh house. But what stands out to me most is here we have a trine going from her progressed sun over to her natal moon. That can be, in fact, even though I don't necessarily have any sort of liking towards this woman, I can't help but have compassion when I see somebody's experiencing like really brutal transits. I just can't help it. I'm Pisces, moon and Cancer. I literally cannot help but have compassion for people. But this is probably like a little bit soothing for her because that trine, this is something that doesn't happen very often at all. Progressions move very, very slowly. Okay, now the sun trining the moon, sun, she's her progressed sun, she's been evolving through this seventh house, and the sign of Sagittarius has finally made it to this point. In fact, it actually just happened about a year ago, but it's still going on, harmonizing with like processing through her emotions. Okay. Not only that, but actually, in fact, I forgot to point this out. This is happening in her progressions and in her transits. Her progressed sun is beaming this opportunistic ray. It's a very, very strong sextile aspect going up to that Saturn in her chart. Again, Saturn, especially Saturn for everybody can have to do responsibilities, but she's got a really strong, like, I'm authority in the world kind of Saturn, and her progressed, meaning like how her progressed sun, how she's evolved in this life, is sending these opportunistic rays towards Saturn, and it's in her chart. So that's also bringing opportunities for her career, if that makes sense. Okay, now hopefully I've got Donald Trump's progressions up here and do. Okay, so wish I was as tech savvy as some of you out there and made some sort of a or, you know, where I can scroll through things easier, but I don't really know how to do that, unfortunately. I'm not handy with a computer. Obviously, I'm handy enough to be able to make these videos, but I'm not tech savvy at all. Okay, so here we have Donald Trump's progressions. Okay, so the inner wheel right here is his natal chart. The outer wheel is his progressed energy. Okay, so his sun, his progressed sun, it's going through the second house, which is the house of money and finances and his earning powers, which clearly Donald Trump does pretty well with that. But the strongest aspect, he does have some squares going on. That's a little bit of an ouch. But this is a really nice progression that here's his progressed moon, which is progressing through the sign of Scorpio, which is very, very intense. But it's trining his natal Mercury. That is another thing that can be really good for friends. Like, again, like making good connections. And I don't just mean like, hey, that's my buddy now. It's more like we both mutually support each other in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so I think I will leave that there. His progressed Mercury is squaring his midheaven. That's mental function beaming intensely right at his career. Okay, but yeah, I'm going to leave that there so this doesn't get too long. Okay, so there's that. I think I covered everything I wanted to. I will say again, I didn't say who I think is going to win. So I think Donald Trump's going to win. I think Donald Trump is going to win. And I think it's going to, a lot of people are going to be very like freaked out about it. A lot of people are going to, do the whole meltdown thing and not my president sort of thing. But it's just kind of what happens every 4 years. I don't really care who wins, as I mentioned. I really don't. I really do my best to just kind of not participate in this sort of thing. But when it comes to observing how it's going through all the astrology behind it, we didn't even go into just the mundane astrology for what's going on in the world. I will put a video out soon about what's to come in 2025. But as of right now, I think Donald Trump is going to win. I could be totally wrong. But again, overall, I think that they are all puppets out there. And I think that the best thing we can do is no matter what, even if you are somebody who hates Donald Trump or somebody who thinks Kamala is just terrible, that doesn't mean that we can't see eye to eye on other things. I think that's what's really most important. In fact, I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. If I had my way, if I had my, Piscean, utopian, dreamy, delusional way of the world existing, it's like, can't we just all, take care of ourselves? Okay, because you can't really take care of other people if you've not taken care of yourself. So take care of ourselves and take care of our loved ones, our family. Obviously, if you have children, they really do come first, but you really can't even take that good care of your children unless you're taking care of yourself. And then spread that out to your neighbors, help to take care of your neighbors, help to take care of your community, help to participate in community functions that better the community, make the community stronger, that sort of thing. And I think about what's going on. And if you haven't really seen what's going on in Northwestern Carolina and Eastern Tennessee and parts of Florida and parts of Georgia, really that chunk between Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, we're talking about hundreds of miles of land that has just been completely wiped out by this hurricane. And there are so many of these people. I'm talking I've probably seen 100 different people just holding their phones up saying, we need help, and they're not really receiving the kind of government and military assistance that most of us would want to see them getting. And I think back to when I was a child, we were evacuated from our house so many times because I still live in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. But where I grew up, it's Loma Prieta Avenue. Okay, some of you might remember the Loma Prieta earthquake. Okay, we were evacuated. We always had fires and floods, but the earthquake was the big one. But every time we were evacuated, or like a neighbor's house burned down in a fire or whatever it was, the entire community came together. There was no government that came in and said, oh, here's your, FEMA money or whatever. I think actually my mom did get a little bit of FEMA money from the earthquake, but not much. But it was all the community who came together, the people who cared for each other. Like, oh, you don't have running water yet? Okay, why don't you come over to my house to take a shower? But, oh, your barbecue works or whatever. Well, okay, well, we'll barbecue at your house, but we'll shower at your house, sort of thing. Everybody came together and did that. And that's what I love to see. Certainly not everybody is going to be like that. Of course, there's always going to be a bad apple. But for the most part, I do truly believe that it's human nature to want to help to care for others. And that's what I want to see. I'm so sick and tired of, having just these regulators and all these crazy rules and cracking down on, being able to share information without some stupid thing popping up saying fact checkers, which I don't believe most of the fact checkers. So anyway, that's my rant. That's where I'm going to leave that. So you guys just saw my Mercury and Aries come out. Okay, so I will leave that there. I hope that made sense to you guys. Of course, I always look forward to reading your comments. I try to respond to every single one of them. Every once in a while, I'll get a comment that's just really, really, it's almost like homework for me to respond to. If you've got something really drawn out that you want to say, you're probably better off sending me an email about it. But okay, I'm going to leave that there. Until next time, guys, namaste to all of you.